Way back when, in the good old days, there was an awful lot of debate about whether the sun or the earth was the center of the universe. One man had a fascinating argument for why the earth was in the middle, as long as you accepted, the existence and divinity of Jesus, which at this time in Europe, sure. He said that if the earth wasn't in the middle, it wasn't special, which, okay, that sounds pretty fair to me, right? And if the earth wasn't in the middle and wasn't special, there might be aliens on other planets. They might be on Saturn, on Mars, on any of them. These aliens might be like us. They might long for higher things. They might search for the existence of a God and forgive us of their sins. These aliens might be begging for Jesus. Would he be there for them? Our hero figured one of two things were necessary if the sun was the center of the solar system. Either Jesus died on Earth for these aliens on all these other planets, which doesn't seem very fair to me. How would they even know? Or he was born and went through his whole ministry, crucifixion, resurrection, all over again on each of these planets, which frankly is a little ridiculous. Jesus Christ getting crucified on Jupiter, the gravity alone would cause some issues. Therefore, in the view of one Jean-Baptiste Morin de Villefranche, the Earth had to be the center of the universe. I know, I'm seeing some skepticism, not all of you are convinced. That's okay, everyone can have their own opinions. I know where my sympathies stand. But despite the insanity of what I just told you, this guy was actually widely respected in his day. Famous philosopher René Descartes sent him his book to see if he approved. This guy was chatting it up with Galileo, and people thought he was the next big thing after Johannes Kepler. So who was Jean-Baptiste Morin? What can he tell us about science? And how can we all be like Morin today? Jean-Baptiste Morin was a fairly ordinary guy at first. He was born to a well-off family outside Lyon in 1583. He became a doctor, got a job as a bishop's personal physician, all good. But in his 30s, he embraced the true passion of his life, astrology. He would spend the rest of his life prolifically writing about this subject. He really used it to rocket to the top of French society. He was the rising star of the astrology world. He became the court astrologer for Louis XIII, Cardinal Richelieu, and Louis XIV. From there, he got a tenured position as a professor of mathematics at the Royal College, which, let me tell you, even back then, getting tenure wasn't easy. He did astrology for a number of reasons. First of all, it made him money, right? It paid the rent. But more importantly, he believed it could help people. If you knew your future, you could use it to live a better life, free from hardship and sin. Morin was very religious and saw it as his duty to help people. Strangely enough, astrology is how he saw himself doing this. He wanted to fix this system of practices and bring it into what was becoming modern science. Just as other scholars were moving away from the practices that had upheld medieval and Renaissance thought, Morin wanted to bring astrology into modernity. He wanted to collect large sample sizes of data to examine precise details of astrology. Had this been done, it would have disproven any correlation between astrology and actual human life. It would have lost the respect and legitimacy it had at that time. People would have realized it wasn't true. But Morin's process led him to these goals. Morin's idea of what proper inquiry was upheld his scientific and intellectual processes for his entire life. So what can we learn from Morin? Well, if you're into astrology, there's a lot. But for those of us who don't know how to draw our own horoscope, there's still quite a bit we can get from this plucky maniac. Morin actually got quite a bit right. He left medicine because bleeding of patients was becoming very common, and he understood that this was terrible. He was far ahead of the curve on this one. Bleeding of patients would continue unnecessarily for centuries, leading to thousands of deaths. A few years after he left medicine, Cardinal Richelieu, the guy with the red cloak I showed you earlier, who was the most powerful man in France, held a contest to see if someone could figure out how to determine longitude at sea. This is a big deal. There's a big cash prize, everything. And Morin actually figured it out. His solution, fully new, involved measuring in the distance of the sky between the moon and a particular star. Morin did still make a new advancement on this issue. He brought thinking forward. And despite this, he didn't even get paid. Richelieu stiffed him. Beyond this, Morin offered one of the most incisive criticisms of Descartes' philosophy. This criticism, known as the circle objection, would be repeated by subsequent philosophers, and has remained one of the fundamental issues with Descartes' philosophical process to this day. From this, some would say that Morin was a genius. It is simply my assertion that he could have done things that were not astrology. Morin could have focused on medicine, on physics, on philosophy, but instead he arrived at astrology because of his personal, intellectual, and scientific processes. For better or mostly worse, Morin stuck to his guns and believed in the methodology that he worked by. Morin called for the collection of large sample sizes of data that, had it been done, would have obliterated astrology. Morin spent his life researching what we would call pseudoscience today, and fought bitterly for these things. And this is what my talk is about. We must base our choices, our actions on our beliefs, not on results, but on process. Had Morin not been as committed to his processes, he might not have stuck with astrology. But he also never would have called out the overuse of bleeding in medicine. He never would have come up with a partial credit answer to the longitude at sea question. He never would have had the respect of other intellectuals to be asked for and make his criticisms of Descartes. We may not have statues of Morin like we do of Descartes, but Morin, without his processes, would be completely forgotten. It's the strange little window into his time that we have today. We're all going to be uncertain about how we fit in the broader picture. We're all going to be overwhelmed by our work in relation to what is out there and what will be out there. What's more, we're all going to be wrong, more or less, in the long run. We're all going to be mistaken and disproven by future generations who will laugh at us like we're laughing right now. But Descartes and Morin lived by their processes. Both experienced tremendous success and tremendous setback from them. We're not sure if we're going to be remembered like Descartes or Morin until well after our deaths. And so there's a few things we can do. First of all, we can look back at Morin and understand that things aren't always as black and white as we think they are. People like Descartes or Kepler aren't the always correct superhumans we make them out to be. And people like Morin aren't the always incorrect buffoons either. But what's more important is that we can direct our beliefs and our actions not on results, but on process. Beyond the sciences, we can work and live on the processes we believe to be good and true. This is the lesson we can learn from Morin, and to take ourselves a little less seriously. We never know what the future may bring. Thank you.